Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first official brain chat. Here we have Dr. Janani Dhinakaran. How are you, Janani?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well. Yeah, I'm Dr. Stephen Cain. I'm president of the Whole Brain Health Initiative. Dr. Janani, she heads our programs. She also has a PhD in neuropsychology and a master's in neuroscience. So she's got a very, very strong background in this field. In addition, she's also a health coach and heads a health coaching team here at Whole Brain Health Initiative. I can't think of anyone better to blend the neuroscience background with the actual lifestyle implementation and those take-home points, being able to implement them into our lifestyle in a sustainable manner. I think Janani is the best person to talk about this with us here. So thanks for joining us on the Brain Chat, Dr. Janani.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a very kind introduction.
Yeah. So the first question that I have here for our chat is, what is brain health? When we think about that general topic, what comes to mind for you?
So for me, brain health isn't that different to the general overall body health. So I find that what tends to be good for the brain tends to be good for everything else too. I'd say within lifestyle medicine, people emphasize nutrition, so food, sleep, exercise, social connection, and stress management or emotion management. The additional pillar that comes in with brain health is cognitive challenge and bringing in that element of resilience in the brain. So I would say it is the same kinds of principles that you would use for preventing diabetes or heart disease would also go into preventing dementia or other degradation of cognitive function. And it also happens to be similar to the things you do for preventing or reversing autoimmunity. So the underlying principles of wellness seem to be common across the board. So I don't think of it as a separate topic anymore. It's very much merged within wellness for me.
Okay. Yeah, very, very, very cool way to think about it. So when you think of brain health, you think of it's just quite synonymous with health, just in general, just adding in that specific aspect of cognitive challenge or stimulation that's more pointed towards brain health. But otherwise, you feel like it's rather ubiquitous, rather just very similar to any other, facet of health.
Yeah, I mean, we would know the difference between how quickly you learn something in your teens or 20s versus when you're in your 40s or 50s. There is some change. So, what I think brain health or keeping active cognitively does is to help us keep as much of that sharpness as we can for as long as possible. And that's a
Hmm.
good indication that your functionality is going to be preserved long term.
Okay. All right. Do you think that cognitive challenges, cognitive brain exercises, do you think that beyond the brain that there's a benefit for the body? Because kind of like we used to think that exercise was, more for the body and not as much for the brain, and now it's, just as much as beneficial. Do you think that either now or maybe at some point in the future, we might realize that the brain challenges are just as much for the body as they are the brain?
I think that one is a little bit tricky because the things that we do with our brains, we don't necessarily always involve our bodies with it.
Uh-huh.
But I think there's a good kind of interchange between them. So, for example, if you want to keep your brain active, you have a sense of purpose, a drive, and that takes you outdoors. It connects you with other people, it keeps you physically active, it challenges you from an emotional or a mental perspective. So, it actually ends up involving everything. But even though your impetus may have been, let me keep my brain sharp, it ends up benefiting the rest of your body too, because you
Uh-huh.
went looking for that. So yes, they are definitely related. But there are also purely cognitive tasks that will not really necessarily engage the rest of the body. Like if you're going to sit and play games on your mobile app or something, it may not really benefit the rest of your body, except in the sense that it may give you more endorphins and serotonin. So it may be good for your overall mental health.
Uh-huh.
But I don't see it having as profound an effect as, say, exercise, physical exercise would have on the brain. I don't see
Uh-huh.
the same equivalency the other way around.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. I guess I was thinking maybe to some degree. You think of some of the research where people they just envision them shooting a basketball, and the basketball going in the hoop, and just that mental exercise of doing that to some degree does translate into that physical bodily performance later on. So perhaps it's just more of the neural coordination aspect of it and how the brain can benefit that throughout the body. But from a heart disease prevention, I agree that just sitting home playing video games or reading books is not going to do a whole lot for preventing a heart attack. Not like going for a walk or a jog would. So yeah.
I have to add here at this point, because during my master's, one of my projects was to look at the difference between imagining playing an instrument and actually playing an instrument in the MRI machine, so using fMRI. And the difference between them is very little. So you're actually activating, so imagining something is not that different to really doing it. And your brain really often can't tell the difference. So this is where I'd say mental exercises that help you envision, like you said, for basketball, even musicians use this. And I think they have used these type of techniques to help people who have had stroke regain the ability to move, increase the range of motion and control that they have in terms of their nerves. So they imagine that they can open their arms out to the side, even if they can't actually do it all the way. Their brain is active in that way. So that actually reactivates some of their ability to move. So it can definitely play that role. It's quite cool.
Very nice. You're by chance familiar with Neuralink and Elon Musk and that program he started up, have you?
This is sounding familiar now. Yes.
Yeah, but either way, it's that just with thoughts, like you're able to start moving a cursor around on a mouse, and the goal is to, I guess, the initial phase is people that have had spinal cord injuries or people that just completely lost any connection with their limbs, that they're able to regain that, and it does seem like they're on the right track with that. So just kind of going with what you're saying about the brain doesn't really know the difference, and that there's a lot of potential for, especially with some of these technologies coming out, for people to really do some special things with just their brain and not even having the rest of that physical matter that's supposed to be there.
Actually, some people in the lab that I was part of were working very closely with gaming companies for this brain-computer interface, basically BCI. And of course, the long-term implication is that they can help people who have no physical movement abilities to be able to still communicate and do things and control things around them. So it's a fascinating side of research. And I think that can also play into a lot of the therapeutic applications that they have for real-time biofeedback-based mental health interventions. So there are some studies that show that you can, by watching a star grow in size as you do a certain mental function, you're actually able to notice your pain management or depression kind of come down. And once you do that enough times, in terms of there's a practice intervention for like a few weeks or something, then you start to be able to do it on your own. So then you're able to use that real-time biofeedback and then manage these conditions without the very expensive intervention of having to have that feedback, and you can learn how to do it yourself. So I think the research on this is really very fascinating. And I just love how people are able to use technology to do so much with the brain. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would, for sure, 100% at this point, definitely want to do something more similar to looking at the stars and not be a test dummy with some of this very early stage technology. I do still wonder in the future, we're just getting more and more immersed with technology. I mean, our screens are just more and more in front of us and closer and just more advanced. And it's like this symbiosis between technology and ourselves. There's a lot of benefits, but there's also the potential drawbacks and the impact that it can have on just too much screen time, or what it can watching too much TV, because it's definitely not a good thing for the brain. Some people can irritate their eyes, and just all sorts of different. I've seen studies where people the side that they hold the phone on, they're more likely to get a tumor in the brain on that side. And so I do feel that there's some sort of some sort of point where it's like a thin line where it's, are you doing it in a way that's good for you, or are you embracing technology in a way that's not good for you? So just, yeah, what's your inkling is what's going to happen, assuming that this chip that they develop at Neuralink does go inside the human brain and there's all sorts of applications. What do you think the long-term impacts of the electromagnetic waves from this technology being not just close to our cells, but literally inside our brain? What's your anticipation for that?
That's a tough one because we have so little information about what will happen. It's one of those things that we have to actually enter, and there needs to be enough safety trials and tests and things to ensure that that isn't going to have long-term effects. It's usually easy to spot short-term side effects because then you can see it immediately, or within a few weeks you'll see it on the monkeys. But long-term side effects are very difficult to discern because there's so many variables that change. And I think this is part of, I would say, the problem with our species is we're in such a rush. So like when we have new technologies, we're so keen to implement them and use them in all kinds of ways. And we're not waiting the kind of time that things used to take before, say, even 50 years ago. It's not that type of time that we have to wait anymore. So I think a lot of unexpected side effects can happen that we won't know until it actually happens. Like people thought that nonstick frying pans and things were like a great invention. And then they're like, oh no, if it chips off, it's toxic. The Teflon isn't really good for you. And we're not doing this low fat thing anymore. We're going back to healthy fats, right? So like there are these things that come and go, and we're not sure of the safety until we've gone into it enough, and then you start to see more and more data, and then you're like, okay, maybe this isn't that smart. Then we start to pull back. But I think as a species, we're just way too curious and a little bit too enthusiastic, and possibly also too driven by capitalistic impulses of like really pushing forward, capturing the market. There's like rush to keep going faster, that these things will really take us out of balance, and it's going to take a lot longer to find that balance. So those are my thoughts, but what do you think?
I feel like there's going to be a high enough percentage of people that are going to have some type of long-term. I mean, I just think of several hours in front of a TV screen seems to be not a good thing. There's a research study I saw was 3.5 hours is kind of like the cutoff for seniors, where they watch more than 3.5 hours TV a day, and the likelihood that they have cognitive decline just significantly, goes up the more that they watch. And that was confounding for other variables too, like not just the ones that watch TV all day or not exercising, or like just that variable alone. So yeah. I do feel that there is some sort of limit, and 24/7 having this, unless there's some way to just completely turn it off. Maybe that's a way you turn it on only so many hours a day. I could see something like that potentially working, but having something 24/7 just constantly wired and working with the brain, it's hard to see the parasympathetic, the rest and digest, that whole system, really being able to do everything that it needs to do the right way for the amount of time that it needs to over the course of years. And I would not be surprised at all if there are consequences. I still think that even if it gives someone the ability to walk that couldn't walk before, that those consequences very well could be worth the risk. But for just the everyday person who just wants to be more synced up with technology, again, there's going to be pros and cons that a lot of people I think are going to have to weigh. How much does this help me with my career? How much does it, bring these things, other things that I want in life, and the cons of that just nonstop. Whatever it is about technology is not good for the nervous system. Having that 24/7 just seems like a big risk.
Yeah, I think that we need to be careful in the sense that like what you said about how it could be worth it if it's helping you walk when you really can't otherwise. So when the therapeutic benefits are worth the potential risks, that would be a good space to start using it, because it makes a world of difference that having that mobility and control to those people. But yeah, as a general thing that a lot of people can just do for like constant entertainment or being able to like get notifications about your messages and whatever's going on social media. I don't think that's a worthwhile use of that technology. I think it needs to be used for solving specific problems. And I would be surprised and dismayed if it was approved for general use for like other things that are not as critical. So it could happen. I mean, that's how, things sometimes work. But yeah, that would just not be what I would say. It's not worth the risk, in my opinion.
Let
I
me
happen to agree with you.
just kind of interesting ethical question for you here. Hypothetically, let's say you could have that chip put inside your brain, and people, and let's say Elon Musk, everyone say like Dr. Jenny, she's smart, she's caring. Like if there's anyone that we need to give this, superpower to really unleash their, ability and desire to help people, let's Dr. Jenny is the one we should, be the one we put this thing inside of. And let's say that the likelihood that you, let's say, cut back on many millions of cases of Alzheimer's, because you now have this just super charged brain that just has access to all the world's information at the nonstop 24/7. Just your you become essentially what as close as you can to a god living here on earth in terms of your mental capabilities with this thing put inside your head, and the good that you can do is just magnetized so many times. I mean, many millions of people having fewer cases of diabetes, and like few people getting amputated from the diabetes, and just like all the lifestyle stuff they want to implement to the world, like that can happen big time. Like just tons of suffering is spared, but your own personal brain is more likely going to wear out a bit quicker too. So let's say that you are juggling these two things from your personal ambitions, things that really matter to you, and potentially sacrificing some of your own health. How would you go about that decision?
When you started asking me this question, I was like this guy wants to put a chip in my brain. I'm like, no way. Right? That's my first reaction is like, don't mess with my body, right? Don't put stuff in. I'm just generally speaking, I'm not very pro medical interventions unless it's absolutely necessary. But when you started talking about all the suffering that I could potentially like reduce, or because that's basically what I want to do with my life. So if I can say, if I'm basically saying so I would give up maybe 2 or 3 years of my life. And maybe the last few years of my life, the quality wouldn't be so great if this is the trade-off. But in the process, I'm able to bring a lack of suffering from all of these various lifestyle diseases to, say, a couple of million people, maybe even more. I'd wait. I'd take it.
I would definitely too. What if it's more than a couple of years? What if instead of counting out at 82 and going to 79, let's say it's half of the life you have left. Let's say you make it until about, I don't know, mid 50s, and at that point you're starting to get cognitive decline and things are starting to fade.
Yeah, tough. That's tough. Because the thing is, I think if it wasn't for my circumstances as a person who has a family, and like I have my kids and I want to see them grow up, and I want to have my own life as well, like all the commitments that I've made to people that I know, not just the people that I don't know. The answer would have been very easy to say, okay, it's worth it. But I think I could do more, and I think it matters to me that I do more for my family, and live long enough to see them kind of happy, self-sufficient, all of that thing. I think that matters to me. And so I think maybe that wouldn't, I don't know, but these are so hypothetical. So
yeah.
So I think if it sounds relatively reasonable, it sounds like, okay, it's very appealing. Imagine all the good you could do. But at the same time, I don't know. I feel like, and the other aspect here is also there's respecting the integrity of the system, of the biology that you've been given, right? And I think this is where there's another type of conflict. It's not just selfish interest versus selfless, like altruistic interests. It's also, like, for example, I don't even know if this should be aired, but I'll just tell you. there is some element of developing control over yourself in a way that it's not easy to do if you have a lot of constant interference. So part of your work, or part of my purpose in life, is to help others. But at the same time, I'm also trying to develop myself, say, spiritually, right? And that requires me to have a certain type of attitude towards my own brain and body that I probably couldn't have if there was a chip in my brain. It's probably not going to let me move out of my default mode network. It's going to keep me on task in a much more linear way. So I won't be able to do some of the things that I can do now. Like this is my imagination of what that chip might do. But like when I just want to spend a few minutes looking at the leaves moving in the breeze and do nothing else, just looking, right? I'm sure that chip is going to say, waste of time, alert, you know? But to me, that's not a waste of time. I really enjoy just looking at trees or the breeze or like nature, basically. And it does something for me, maybe not at the brain level, but at the soul level. And I mean, I'm connected to this world. I'm part of nature. So if that chip is going to take that connection from me, no matter how many people I can help, I don't know if that's a trade I could make.
Yeah, fair enough.
I don't know that. I don't know if it fits in with the narrative of me being the scientist, but
yeah, and I think there's probably many more nuances you'd have to know about the implications of the chip besides having just super processing power. What does it optimize your own brain for you? Does it say, alert, you should go out and look at the trees and leaves right now because this will be a great thing for your brain. It will have you, able to, take in even more of what we have to give you, and maybe even give you the alert once you start looking at it too long. Okay, now you're getting lazy. Get up, get back to it. Maybe it's something along those lines. So you'd have to, obviously don't want to be the test dummy on this, but maybe versions down the line. And when you said the thing about the spiritual aspect to yourself, I remember reading a study a while back. I believe it was the right parietal lobe, that when people had injuries to it and the functioning went down, that they tend to lean towards the more spiritual, I guess, just perspective on life. They felt more spiritual. They felt more connected to everything. And I think the theory was that the right parietal lobe does a lot in like spatial relations. It's like, hey, you're over there, I'm over here, that's over there. We're not connected because of this space between us. And yeah, and when that processing goes down, that you sense less of a spatial distance between different things, different people, that there's just this more, you sense a connectedness between everything and everyone. And that, I guess, is the theory as to why people with these injuries to the right parietal lobe have this, more spirit. So I'm just wondering if this chip could go in and, if someone needs, 5% to be in spiritual mindset or mode, if that can shut down the right parietal lobe and activate the other parts, or, create this, these spiritual things without it, maybe even ways, maybe there was some ways that people like to take drugs to get a spiritual or connected kind of sense, that, maybe this thing can just, program it and, make sure that people don't overdo it. Like you're going to get, X%, spirituality, and where people, they don't have this and they start taking drugs, they fall down the rabbit hole, they get immersed in it, they're doing too much. And, but maybe that little bit that, could be benefit in small amounts can be automated through something like this. I thought that could be kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the potential for like things like magnetic stimulation to the brain, or I find that whether it is stimulation through these devices or through drugs, I feel like there's a certain journey that one has to go through on their own, in the sense that you have to be able to control that yourself. And so while these are like fascinating in terms of, if you have, say, one of the things that I read is a book called How to Change Your Mind. And I found it fascinating. I was completely opposed to any type of drug use, even caffeine, before that. And once I started to read the research on psilocybin, I was like, hey, this would be a great birthday present for me when I turn 50 or 60, right? Because by then, probably my default mode network is so fixed, or I've been stuck in various ruts and cognitive patterns that I've made habits. And it would be great for this drug to come in or like this mushroom to come in and kind of kick me off the default mode network for a while so I can open up and look at the world like I did when I was a child. So I think there's a time and a place and a set and a setting in which those can be really useful. And I think they're going back to the research and looking at the therapeutic value of these drugs now. But similarly, the stimulation can also be used in this way. I read about the temporal lobe seizures that give people religious experiences. That's one of those things that fascinated me with neuroscience when I was in my bachelor's. And that's it kind of shows how religion and spirituality are inbuilt in the brain in some ways that we're actually programmed with it. And we have that tendency built into us, no matter how rational we can get. But the reason I'm saying this is that there are potential therapeutic uses for bringing in that perspective, or the spiritual perspective. And where people are inclined that way, or they need it for clinical reasons, I think that it should be used. But if you're not going through anything difficult with your life, you don't have any clinical symptoms, then I would say your spiritual path is your own. Like, it's your responsibility. Go do your meditations, go do your breathing exercises. You're going to be able to induce these states in other ways where you can actually bring control back by yourself, and it's not being externally modified by someone who programmed a chip or the drug that you like a mushroom that you're not going to be able to get out of your system as soon as you want to get out of it. So if you learn it through like qigong or yoga or something, you're going to be at the same time trained in techniques to ground you back into reality anytime it gets excessive. And so you are completely in control of that experience. And I think maybe I'm a little bit very fond of control, but I kind of take any of these things that can take you away from that self-control with I look at it with a lot of suspicion. So I think your mental state needs to be within your own conscious control.
I 100% agree that should be the default, the baseline, the way that when people want to get themselves into the right state of mind, not being reliant or not, on any sort of, very regular basis using the electronic or, drug to induce it. However, I do feel that for that maybe at certain frequencies, maybe it's once or twice a year, that it's different. I've done both the meditation, I've done the mushrooms, and it's while they both can obviously change the state of mind and give you different perspectives, and I do see them as very different, and not like I don't think one could truly replace the other in terms of what the unique aspects that each one has to bring. I also, if that's the kind of thing that can somehow spark something within someone to see something differently, or to, get them thinking about a new career path or a new perspective on life, I just feel like there's a lot of potential for that. But because we're all very addictive creatures, and it's, most people don't have the best self-control, that can be opening up a can of worms, and something that can be, a really bad thing. But it's finding that middle ground. I feel like there's a lot of potential for it for these kind of things to play a role, and obviously be the supplement or the sprinkles on top for what you're talking about with the daily meditation and those right, healthy, sustainable practices to really, manage and instill the right types of, frame of mind.
Yeah, I think something that you talked about, addictive creatures, I just wanted to say something about that, because I recently listened to a podcast by Gabor Mate. I think that's how you pronounce his name. And he talks about how addiction isn't really about the substance. It's actually a state of mind from which we are looking to fill some kind of void internally. And how when you change the circumstances around you and you're able to get that from something else, then you don't need that anymore, whatever the substance was. So, and he says that it's induced by trauma. So like, it's because we go through something that we're not able to process and reset ourselves, that we kind of look to things that, whether it's food, whether it's work, whether it's other substances that are more dangerous for the body, that the habit of getting addicted is actually an adaptive mechanism. It's not the way that people villainize it. It's not that, essentially. So he talks about, in that podcast, he talks about how people are punished for being traumatized. And so, I mean, that was a different perspective. I thought that was a very insightful observation. The other thing I wanted to point out is that psilocybin is not addictive. It's one of those things that you can have just once and you'll never crave it again because it gives you so much in terms of insight. This is all not from personal experience. This is from the book, How to Change Your Mind. I haven't tried any of these types of substances, but I hope to when I'm older, when I feel like I need it. And if it becomes legal, because it's not legal in a lot of places yet. And so I don't even know where I could begin to look for it. So, but it's not meant to be addictive. And I think that's why it's been used in addiction several times in other studies also, psilocybin. So people just let go of these habits and they're able to step away from that and look at themselves completely differently after that experience. But yes, I agree that clinical potential for these type of substances is so vast. It should definitely be explored.
Yeah. That's a good point. I'm glad I was even thinking about my own mind after I said it and you started talking that, mushrooms aren't, necessarily an addictive substance. I guess I'm just thinking more broad and drugs and mind altering substances in general that people that have this void that needs to be filled quite often, whether it's psilocybin or marijuana or LSD or, whatever it is that the vast majority of people that I know that I've met throughout my life that do drugs, whether it's mushrooms or any of these things, that they tend to overdo them on average. Whether it's just going from one to the next and just trying to get a break from whatever reality, because their regular reality just is not as pleasing to them as they really want it to be. That's just a concern that I have, that maybe it's a gateway where you try one thing and you try another, and then eventually you find something that is more addictive, where you just bounce around and you're not creating that foundation of a mental state or a mindset that you really enjoy on a regular basis. So I think it's thinking more broad about just mind altering substances in general than psilocybin.
So there's this teacher of mine who teaches Qigong, and he's actually introduced a course. Maybe we can link it to the bottom of our YouTube video today that we're having right now. It's actually an introduction to the various kinds of meditation, and he associates them with the various developmental stages. So he talks about how you can't do mindfulness without grounding first and being very secure in your attachment to in the sense that you need to feel comfortable with yourself before you can explore mindfulness and other practices. So he's divided them into 4 elements and he has these modules. I think it's a great idea to order the different kinds, because people think of meditation and they have okay, that means mindfulness or that means chanting something, right? It's not. It's actually a whole spectrum. It's like physical exercise. It could be dancing, could be hiking, could be lifting weights, it could be running, whatever it is. There's so many types of physical exercise. Similarly, there are so many types of mental exercises, meditations, which he's put into a very interesting order. So I think that's worth for our viewers to kind of explore. That connects to whatever we talk about, addiction and trauma and things like that.
Yeah, we could definitely link that below. So how would you define meditation? What's your umbrella definition for it?
Meditation it covers various things you can do with your mind. So, but essentially it's an exploration process of gaining control over something that most people who don't meditate don't really have, because we don't try to control our minds. The mind just goes where it wants and just does what it wants, and we're kind of caught in all of it, and we don't exert any control most of the time. So meditation is, I think, one of the ways in which we realize that a lot of what we do can be trained, can be improved, and we can exert more. I don't like the word control, but essentially more consciousness and awareness, and therefore choose. So we end up having more choice about what our reactions are and what our habits are. So I think that awareness building And it starts from the awareness, and then you can do a lot more with it. So if you have that ability to consciously pay attention when you want to and like move that cognitive flexibility around, then you gain a lot more abilities to do with your mind things that you couldn't have imagined doing if you didn't have that in the first place. Does that sound like a definition?
I think we gotta consolidate this definition a little bit here. Would you say it's attention training? Would you, if you had to, try to make it even more simplified? How, or can you? Do you feel like you can make it more simple?
I think mindfulness has a very clear definition. It is paying attention in the moment, non-judgmentally, on purpose. So mindfulness is very clear, but meditation covers mindfulness and a whole other series of things that you can do. Mindfulness is just one type of meditation. So there's also metta, which is loving kindness meditation, and that sends loving kindness to yourself and to others, sometimes people you have conflict with, and expand it to all beings in all the universes, if there are, right? All beings that there are. So that's a different type of meditation that actually serves a different function. So I think having control over your mind is what all these different meditations end up doing. And I think the first building block of that is mindfulness. Once you build that attention through mindfulness practice, all other mental exercises open out to you. This includes like self-hypnosis and like various things, so many things.
Okay. Whether it's in this episode or future episode, we're eventually going to get like a real, solid understanding of meditation. So you did a great job with mindfulness, and that's just a part of the umbrella of meditation. So is meditation, does it always incorporate some element of like a conscious focus on something, whether it's your compassion, whether it's your breathing, whether it's the zone of the bicycle ride that you're on? Like, what is there always some sort of like just very almost kind of conscious focus of the mind?
Yeah, so there are two types of attention, so the attention or focus. So there is what they call the choiceless awareness, which is just being completely present and you're aware of everything in terms of all your senses, right? So that is choiceless awareness. And then there is more concentration-based meditations, where say you take a certain question or a problem and you see that through, like how it flows, where it goes. Not just in your mind, but in your body also. So you use focus or concentration or attention differently based on what you're trying to achieve. So, for example, in Qigong, if you were trying to relieve a certain blockage in your body, you would send your attention to that specific place where you feel the pain or blockage, and you would breathe into it and just pay attention to it. You're not forcing, but you're inviting and allowing. And then the change starts to happen, if it happens. Maybe not, right? But either way, you're bringing compassionate attention to that space. And more often than not, within 10 to 15 minutes, there is a transformation. So this is where you're using that attention. So if you do mindfulness regularly, you could do this much more effectively. But if you're not practicing mindfulness, you wouldn't be able to hold the attention there for long enough. You'd get distracted about all kinds of other things. So your effectivity of doing that second exercise will come down. So that's why I say mindfulness is that first step, and then you can do so much with it.
Gotcha. Now, I know there's so much variation person to person and what's going to be most beneficial for them. But if you had to guess, if there was one form of or type of meditation that you feel the majority, or not the majority of people, but the highest percentage relative to other types of meditation would be beneficial, how would you describe that type of meditation?
I would choose metta, or I would say maybe the inner smile. So metta is different. They're both very similar in the sense that it involves loving kindness, but metta is a little bit to yourself. Like you start with yourself, but it spreads outwards to everyone around you, right? So that is metta, loving kindness. But in a smile, starts with yourself and goes into yourself so deeply that at the end of it, you feel very nourished. You feel like loved and warm and taken care of, and you feel really like resourced. And from that position, you can do metta in like this massively different way. Because how can you send love to other people if you don't have enough for yourself? You're like, oh, there's just a little bit. I better keep it for myself. So instead, you're like, I'm overflowing. I've sent so much inner smile to all parts of my own self that now I have so much abundance. It's going to basically just automatically radiate to everything and everyone around me. So I'd say these two would have, if many, many more people practiced it, it could change the world. Like, hands down, like, there's absolutely no question. It changed the way that because compassion is a skill that you can train, you can practice. And people who practice it regularly perform better in their jobs. They do better in terms of their social connections and have more satisfying relationships. So I think compassion is that one thing that we can actually train. It isn't easy to do, especially when you have conflict. But if you nourish yourself and then you have compassion for others, you won't. It can drastically change so many things. World peace, it wouldn't be a joke. So yeah, I think that would be the one I choose.
Okay. Well, and how would you walk people through doing it? Maybe even, I don't know if it makes sense to do it right now, but maybe just a quick kind of guide on what, how someone would, tactfully implement that.
So which one? Inner smile or metta?
The inner smile.
Okay. So I learned this from Reverend Fajan, who is my Qigong teacher. And there is a version, I think he's made available for everyone as well, but I'll just walk you through the rough steps because his version takes 20 minutes. I can just walk you through what he does, right? So you bring a smile onto your face. It doesn't have to be a genuine smile. You can just lift your mouth into a smiling posture. And you smile into the universe. And the universe smiles back at you. So you use that smiling energy and you send it to your eyes, your nose, your ears, your mouth, your tongue. And then from the tongue, it goes into your heart, the lungs, the liver, the spleen, the kidneys, the reproductive organs, right? And in each of these, you send the smile for long enough that you start to see a shift. So you're saying, let my eyes thrive. Let them be at ease. May they be well, right? So you're sending the same type of affirmations that you would send when you're doing metta to other people. You're sending it to your own organs, right? And in Chinese medicine, you have each of these organs are associated with a system. So if they say liver, it's not just your physical liver organ, even though that's what you're doing, you're sending it to that, but it impacts the rest of that meridian also. The second round, you smile at the universe again, and it smiles back, is through the digestive system. So you collect the smile in your saliva and you swallow it, and you imagine it going through and smiling into your stomach, your intestines, and then out. And he says you take a nice psychic dump and you let anything that you need to let go of into the earth. It goes into compost, and it's good for something else. There's no such thing as bad chi. It's just not in the right place. The third cycle is when you smile at the universe, it smiles back into your brain, into your spines, peripheral nerves, and then it spreads from those nerves to every other part of you that you haven't mentioned. So muscles, bones, tendons, all those other things to your skin. And then it comes out like a layer over your skin, right? And then it radiates like you're glowing because you're so full of that inner smile, which is also the external smile. The universe has smiled into you so deeply that you're full of this compassion and wellness and happiness. This is what I mean by it's a powerfully self-nourishing exercise. If you feel like not able to feel gratitude for anything, you feel depressed, like everything's going wrong, or any of these negative things that you're angry all the time, this is that one practice that makes you feel, So, and once you do this, you're just a better human being.
Yeah, absolutely. How long do you think it takes to do this practice for the average person?
Probably 20 minutes at the most. Yeah. Yeah.
The minimum.
When you switch from organ to organ, you have to wait for that response. So when you switch from your heart to your lungs, you often notice, okay, you're breathing more easily, your breath slows down, you breathe more deeply, or it becomes more rhythmic. And then you move to the next. So you're actually visualizing and you're noticing, looking for physical signals saying that, yes, I've received the smile. You can move on to the next. So it really depends. Like if you're really receptive, you can move really fast through all of it. If you're kind of slow, you may need to spend more time. Like say your stomach needs more attention. You may need to spend some time there. So it's difficult to say. It's not like get through it, do those reps. It's not like that, right? It is kind of a lot of awareness. Okay, it looks like something is stuck here. Why don't I spend some time compassionately looking at my shoulder, right? Something like that, right? So it's hard to say, but I'd say 20 minutes is like not rushed, and it's a good. But I think there are apps where you can do it faster. It's just I don't know how effective it is. If you want to feel that full nourishment, you want to take your time with this. You can do this before you sleep as well.
Yeah. Yeah, hope these viewers try it out. I know I'm definitely gonna try it out. I was walking, doing it as you're describing it, but to spend even more time, I want to. Yeah, you've encouraged me to try something new out.
I was just saying, if you remember the order, it's easy to do for yourself. You don't need to rely on something guided.
Okay. How do you think people in general should think about optimizing their brain as a whole?
Optimizing. Oh, you mean what they can do about it?
Yeah, like I mean, not just I think people are already aware of what they can do. They've probably heard about blueberries or coconut oil or brain games or exercise. I think most people have heard about what things are generally good for it. But if they really wanted to optimize it in the most efficient way, in the most efficient way possible, how would they think about that?
So I'd say possibly even more than food. I'm starting to realize that exercise is the like critical thing, right? So physical movement, physical activity. It seems to be something so simple, but people often don't prioritize it when they have time pressure. They just say, okay, I'll skip today and I'll do it tomorrow. And then it just becomes a habit to skip. So more important than what you eat, how often you eat, and whether you like fasting is good too, but I'd say more important than everything else is exercise. It's like the top thing there. Right next to it, maybe I would say sleep. People having like a routine where they go to sleep at the same time every day, and this is not easy. Like it's not like I'm speaking from a perspective of I do this all the time. You guys should do it too. I mean, I'm trying, but it isn't easy all the time to keep that same routine. There are things that gets in the way, but if you can prioritize and then you're getting up without an alarm, you feel fresh, you've had solid restful sleep. I think these two things, they are super underrated. People talk about them, but they don't understand just how profound it is in terms of the effects on the brain and the whole body. So if these two could be converted into a pill, you'd have such a great market for it. It's because it involves time that people are not doing this as regularly as they ought to for their own brain health. So I would say these two are the top.
The top, okay.
Would you agree?
And I'd probably, it's tough to. Part of me doesn't even want to say like anything's at the top. I mean, I guess I encourage people to not think about what's the exercise is the best or nutrition is the best or sleep. I just really want people to think about what's best for them and as the individual. I mean, obviously, you need to understand that the exercise as a whole, getting that is way more important than for most people taking a supplement or whether or not they have an apple or an orange that day. So yeah, I just that's the thing that I really think people ought to emphasize is their their GOFI, their greatest opportunity for improvement. If someone's already exercising a bunch and they sleep really well, but their stress levels are through the roof, and they haven't done any type of meditation like that, that's the calming the mind down, and doing the self-compassion, or
Right.
whatever approach they take. That's what I feel is just. It's one of the reasons we have Whole Brain Health Initiative going here, is because I don't hear any other brain health organizations really harping on this, really trying to teach people and train people how to sift through the world of brain health, and figure out where their high leverage inputs are, and what they really need to focus on to make the best of what they got.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think your answer is definitely much more individualized and specific in terms of what each person may need. Like, you do need to understand where each person may have their own low-hanging fruit, and that would be the GOFI, the greatest opportunity for improvement. And it would be different for each person. So, yeah.
Come back to the sleep. Maybe find another rabbit hole to go down here. So I've just like you, I've read and heard so much about how sleep's important, and that you want to have that same regimen of go to bed at the same time. I noticed that for me, it's maybe the past 5-10 years or so. It's almost these like cyclical waves of where I just my natural sleep cycle seems to change. I sometimes going to bed early, waking up early. Sometimes I'm staying up late and waking up later. And sometimes I just get this urge. I'm excited about something. I want to get to work on it. That takes me into the late hours, where if I try to force myself to sleep when I'm not tired, I just feel like I'm wasting time just rolling around in bed when the mind it's not shutting off. And what are your thoughts? Do you think that there's any kind of cyclical nature to our sleep habits? Do you think that there's sometimes people go through waves, maybe if they're going through a change in life, that their sleep's going to get disrupted, and it's okay to have the less than 7 hours of sleep for a certain duration?
Yeah, actually, I think a lot of this goes back to, say, the seasons, right? So we're more likely to want more sleep in winter just because it stays dark for longer and it's cozy in bed and you don't want to get out and face the cold. So there's a certain seasonality to it through the year. So if you're very in tune with the natural cycles, you're going to feel that reflect in your sleep as well. I think a lot of people feel more energetic. Like, I can speak for myself, and I feel more energized when the sun rises in the spring. Then I'm like, okay, sun's up, let's go. So I feel that sense of energy that comes with the sun rising. That I don't really feel if I have to get up at the same time for like my child's school, and I have to get up before the sun rises. I'm like, oh, no, I don't want to. So, I mean, no matter how early I get to bed, the fact that the sun hasn't risen makes me resistant to want to get up. So there is some energy that comes from that, seeing the light from outside. So I think there's some level of seasonality to it. The other thing that I can think of that can modify your sleep cycle significantly is when you have children. That's just, you can't do much about it. You're going to have to go through almost like a year, maybe a year and a half of multiple interruptions. And so long as the children are less than 5, they're going to have nightmares. They're going to have all kinds of reasons to wake you up in the night. So, I mean, at that point, making sure that you're responsive to your children's needs is more important than saying, okay, you deal with yourself, you little toddler, you have to be self-sufficient in the night. I'm going to go prioritize my sleep. I think that's maybe not such a great calculation for their long-term emotional health. But I mean, apart from these, I can see if you're excited about a project and you're getting up early, that just means that you're ready for the day and you have that energy. And this is without an alarm, I'm guessing, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, as long as you're not using an alarm, I would say set an alarm to go to sleep. Don't set an alarm to get up. So that way you like, there are times where I get lost in an activity and I want to just continue. But if I'm forced to take a break to, say, go drink water or whatever other reason, just break that momentum for a bit, the tiredness suddenly hits me. And I'm like, oh, I've entered the red zone. I'm going to be a zombie tomorrow if I don't go to bed right now. So I think it's very easy to get lost in, say, a book or a movie or something, or sometimes even just creating like a project that you're making, you're involved in that creative process, and sleep is like not interesting. You just want to work on it. But even then, this is what you could do is like basically a sleep test. So what I would say is walk, get some water, come back, and maybe just close your eyes for like 10 seconds. At that point, in those 10 seconds, if you feel this sense of just want to give me a dark room and I'll fall asleep right now. If you have that sensation, respect your body and go to sleep. If you don't, go back to whatever you were doing. Okay? So, and on the nights that you miss getting enough sleep, you can also make up for it with naps if that is allowed in your schedule. It's okay to take a power nap if it doesn't interfere with your night's sleep. So there are ways to make up for it. I mean, I'm not as militant as some books would suggest you ought to be, but yeah, I mean, you got to make your own choices, and you know.
Yeah, it's something I think about it a decent amount. I feel like there's a certain, at least what I've found for myself personally, there's a certain degree of intuitiveness where the more in touch you are with just your own mental states and energies, and more you can just kind of trust that intuition. Sometimes even before my bedtime, I'll just feel my eyes starting to come down, and the more I just give into that, the more I give into these internal clocks, it just seems like I tend to do better. I think it was last weekend, for whatever reason, normally I'm in bed around by 10 p.m., but I was just, for whatever reason, last night, I think maybe I rested earlier in the day, and then later at night, I just had this energy, this like internal drive to go out, and I ended up going out dancing, late at night. And, it's very rare that I'm, ever out past midnight, but I was out dancing and just had an incredible time, last Saturday night. And then the whole, like, several days after that, it was a very novel experience for me too. Like I never, it's been a very long time since I've stayed out that late, and and I just had so much fun. I feel like this cognitive boost for the next several, 3-4 days after that, I was almost like riding this wave of just this, this spark, this variety, this novelty. And even though I had, less sleep that night, it seemed like, things were just better for a bit there. That's just something I've noticed for myself personally.
Yeah, I think I've had instances where that happens. Like for me, it was when you fall in love, you start to deprioritize sleep big time. So you're up talking all night, or thinking about the other person for a very long time. But you tend to, and then you wake up early and you don't really miss the sleep. You just feel like you're floating on something. There's something else that's powering you except for sleep. So there are those examples. And I think getting lost in your work is also a form of that. You're getting lost in the love of what you're doing. And I think so there is something to be said for that. What it does for you, instead of following it more mechanically.
Yeah. Do we go down another rabbit hole here? Another rabbit hole?
Ways to. Yeah. What is the next rabbit hole?
Love.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Right, shoot.
Okay, from a cognitive boost or cognitive optimization standpoint, how would you, for both for yourself? Yeah, let's start off for yourself. If you were to design like the ultimate, I guess, love, and let's just say for a significant other, not, the meta love for everything and all universes, but for the, your partner, for that special someone, how would you describe the ideal love scenario that's that works best for the brain?
I'm gonna have to take a couple of think about this. I never thought of brain health and love in the same context. Are you talking about what kind of relationship would keep your brain health for the longest time? Is that what you're
So,
referring to, or?
so when you were talking about how when you're in love, that can affect your sleep, and you can, maybe not need as much sleep, and you've just, you have this, kind of elevated energy or mindset, and I'm sure that can play a role in cognitive boost, and you can, do more with your brain, and you need less sleep, you need less recovery. Like it's doing more for a certain amount of time, but you might wear out eventually after so much. So there needs to be some variety, and is it a deep emotional love where there's a synergy, and there's this brain boost that comes from that, but it needs to be balanced with a certain amount of calmness and parasympathetic, and having a type of love where there's a deep connection, but it's not always so intense or not always so impassionate all the time. Like if you could just kind of describe the nuances of a loving relationship, where the brain it's juiced, it's got the energy, it's got brain power, but it's not being overtaxed, and there's hopefully that gives you some mindset. What else?
Yeah, okay. I think I understand the question a little better now. So neurochemically speaking, there are 3 stages in a romantic process, right? So the first aspect is often lust, which is primarily testosterone driven. And this is often like the initiation process, like you're getting into. It's very, very short-lived in terms of your whole life. It's quite short-lived. And then you get into the dopamine-driven love, like affection aspect, which transforms. And then you get into the oxytocin aspect, which is a very long-term committed relationship that just stays, right? Like you've made that partnership solid with that oxytocin. So the 3 stages will have different effects on your brain sharpness. Like when you're obsessed with someone and you think that you have so much energy and you're not sleeping, you're actually not spending all that energy on creative work. You're spending that energy on trying to get to know that person, and your neurons are firing in like what we call long-term potentiation. You want to know everything about that person, right? You're gathering all that information. Your brain's going through a lot of processing to figure out if this is the right mate for you. You think that this is going to work out. It's not a logical process. It's a very intuitive, like a complicated process that considers other things. Like if you like the smell of someone, it's not because they smell good generally, like objectively. It's because their allergens are different to yours. So your MHC, so the major histocompatibility complex, is different to theirs. So one of the things you can do to find out if you like the other, like if you would be genetically compatible, is to check whether you like each other's smell. And if you're very closely genetically related and you don't know it for some reason, you're not going to like the other person's smell. You're not going to enjoy it at all. And that's a way to kind of signal to you that this is not a good mate for you, right? So like genetically speaking, right? So forget the rest of it, but genetically it's a good sign that you should back off, right? And you would want to back off. You're not going to be driven towards that. So there is like a whole bunch of cognitive processing that is elevated when you fall in love, but they're not used for productive purposes. You're pretty useless at your job at that point. You're pretty like distracted from all the tasks. You're thinking about that person all the time. So I don't see how this is actually good for you in the sense it's not something you want to keep repeating because it's going to take you off your course. That's the way. But I think that the oxytocin phase, where you're in a stable relationship, you have mutual trust, great communication, and you have a source of love that you can count on consistently. Now, that is a sense of emotional security, warmth that you can actually build something with. So when you have that as your like a foundation or an anchor or something, you can go anywhere. You can explore a lot of things. You can take risks because you have a secure attachment there. Like you have something to come home to. So I think that is actually a very pro-productivity based type of love. It's going to help you explore different ideas and keep you warm and cozy inside in your heart, enough that you can do so many things from that place of safety. So if you don't have that, oxytocin bond very strongly with this one person that you're committed to, then you tend to look for that. You're looking for that sense of consistent warmth, and so a lot of your processing power ends up going towards those kinds of experiences where you're looking for that person who might give you that. But this is my take based on the little neurochemistry that I remember of the phases.
I'm wondering if there's, I mean, obviously, if someone's in that super intense, lustful, very driven, can't stop thinking about the person. Obviously, that's not good if they're going to take a cognitive test because they're thinking about the person, they can't stay focused. But maybe there's a benefit because when you're gathering all this information, is this the right mate for me? Perhaps it's important to do that. To really, one of the most biggest decisions that we make in life is who do we spend our life with, and so perhaps there's a benefit from a mate selection standpoint to really be able to want to focus on that person and really figure them out. And so I'm wondering if that the way that we're currently designed, if it is it is designed for optimization, beyond just our reproduction, but if there's some sort of internal optimization that comes from that. Just a short phase of really wanting to gather and being focused on boys or girls or whoever it is that you're into, and really constantly gathering as much data as you can so that you can expedite that process of figuring out who the right mate or the right person for you to be with is. And then you've got many decades of that oxytocin, that bond, that assuming that's the route you go, which obviously throughout our evolutionary history it wasn't always a pair bond, at least not as much as it is now. So I'm just my undergrad was in anthropology biology. It was a lot of evolution, so that's how I see a lot of things as just the kind of the evolutionary explanation for the Darwinian kind of perspective on things. And then over the past 10 years, I've focused very much on brain health, and so I kind of see life in the light of these two things quite regularly. And I wonder if it definitely makes sense. Love how it works from our Darwinian standpoint on how it ensured the survival of our offspring, and how the way men and women are kind of different in the way that they think about mating and who they want to be with and how they want to spend their time. But from a cognitive optimization standpoint, I just wonder if there's like we think about meditation, we think about exercise, we think about nutrition, all these ways to make the best of our brain, and I'm wondering how love fits into that. If someone can consciously beyond their own self practice, but this is, I'm going to optimize my brain by making sure I get this relationship with this person to this level where we are more oxytocin bonded, or alter this type of relationship with this person where it's just more of a neurologically fruitful kind of experience. That's just something I've been thinking about.
Yeah, I think this also reminds me of the Gabor Mate podcast with Dan Harris that I was referring to earlier. And he talks about how a lot of the things that we go through now, like so many children being diagnosed with ADHD, and it's more a systems problem rather than the children. So if you can look at the environment that causes those reactions and then look at what we evolved with, you'll see a shift in the society, in the way that it's structured. We're much more isolated than we ever were before. And so when you talk about, yes, historically we were not pair bonded, and we're not as a species pair bonding species. We're not like lobsters or swans or any of those others that just have one mate and that's it. We're, as apes, capable of various different types of social structures, and we've gone through several iterations of that in our evolutionary history also, and even more recent history as a species. But having said that, I think the common link in all of these is the presence of a tight-knit community. So whether you're getting that oxytocin from one significant other, which I think is a lot of pressure to put on one person, or you get it through an entire community, a society, a family, or a tribe, that oxytocin is essential. And that sense of safety and belonging is essential to anything else you explore. So I think it's not so much that the romantic love plays a role here in terms of you need to find that one person. It could be that you just have a very strong family that's all around you. Like anything you need, you just call someone. You're raising a child. Okay, there are 5 different cousins who want to babysit. So that kind of an atmosphere will not drain you the way that an isolated existence where it's just the 2 of you taking care of your kid, that will drain you. You're not going to have space in your brain for anything else, let alone basic sanity. So you need that strong community. And I think that's much more important than finding that one special someone. I think we as a society have over-romanticized love and marriage. And we try to get everything from that one partner. He needs to have the same taste in music as me, same taste in movies as me. We need to have coffee together. We need to have adventures together. We also need to have kids together and manage our routines together. Not necessarily do all these things have to happen with the same person. You can have some things dedicated to what you do as partners, as a family, and then you can find the other things with your friends. You have a whole group of friends for other things that maybe you don't share with your partner. So what? That's good. That's much more stable and reliable than trying to put everything into that one person, and you have to show up in all these different ways for me like this. It's a lot of pressure, and I think it's not necessary.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up too. I do a lot of the senior wellness programs at retirement communities and those places. It's, vast majority of the women, their husbands have already died, men just died at younger ages, and they're 90% women that are probably not going to be finding that romantic kind of love that they hopefully once had. And it doesn't mean that the game's over, that there's no love, that there's no optimization or enjoyment from from the sense of love. One of the trivia questions that we did, it was eros, agape, philia, storge. I forgot the other one, but there are 5, I believe it was Greek words for love, the different types of love. And I just thought, that there's so many different ways to get that love, the oxytocin, the connection that really keeps us, healthy, feeling good, and is a great thing for the mind as well. So we're glad you brought that up.
I just wanted to tell you about a couple of things that gives you an oxytocin boost, since we're talking about it. One is prolonged eye contact. So the urban myth, I don't know how true this is, but it goes that if you stare deeply into someone else's eyes uninterrupted without speaking for 4 minutes, you fall in love with them, right? So this sounds like it may not be romantic love. It could just be that you feel really bonded to them because it requires a certain amount of trust to be able to do that for 4 minutes straight. So eye contact boosts oxytocin. So does breastfeeding, which is why it's so important for the mother-baby bond that you do the breastfeeding, because each time you breastfeed, there's a rush of oxytocin. And for you and the baby, and there's a lot of eye contact, a constant gaze between the mother and child to also build more oxytocin. So that's a very deeply bonding process. Hugs can give you oxytocin, just plain old hugs, like plain old. We say that it's plain old, but if you get hug deficient, it can be a problem. So this is what I mean by a community that you can count on. So you actually have that support physically. Also, you need a hug, you can get one, right? So that's another one. And then the 4th one is orgasms. So orgasms also boost oxytocin. So this is why when you move from the dopamine level, you're able to establish an oxytocin-based relationship in the romantic context, is because you are having sex, good sex, hopefully, often enough that you develop that strong oxytocin bond. So you're chemically imprinted to each other in a way that you wouldn't be with someone that you've never been physically intimate with, or you didn't have a good experience with. So these are the 4 so there are multiple ways. It doesn't have to be romantic. It can be mother-child hugs, eye contact also.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a cool conversation. I had the agenda of the things I thought we were going to talk about, and but this is we went down some very good tangents here. to wrap up here, I think a good thing, at least for this episode here, is to for us to discuss and share what we feel our own GOFIs are, our own greatest opportunity for improvement is pertaining to our own brain health. So, what would you say is your GOFI?
I think for me, it's currently exercise. And I've been working on it actively because I can tell how different I feel when I'm doing this regularly. On most days, I do at least 20 to 30 minutes of cardio, and then I move into weights. So yeah, that's what I'm working on very actively now because I was not historically a very sporty person. And I think in retrospect now, when I look at other children, like my kids' friends and my kids themselves, I realized that I was unhealthy. So what I used to think of as I'm more intellectual. I like to read my books and I'm not like a sporty person. Firstly, I don't think team sports really suit me, but other types of exercises do. So I think now I've discovered that and I've started working on it and it's made a big difference. What about yours?
Okay. I like your answer, by the way. It's good reflection on, your previous self and where you are now. Uh, I I say for me, it's adding another layer of calmness. I think that I have nature kind of reflecting on my past. I have a nature to seek out intensity, to try to, just do things from a high energy state. And I just think that that's not I don't make as good of decisions when I get intense, when I get very excited about things, and I think that adding a layer of depth of calmness, particularly at the situations that really warrant it. When there's just important things that need to get figured out. When a decision that I make is going to have an important consequence. I think that really in those times where I would tend to lean into getting intense and getting ramped up, being more conscious of maintaining more calmness is something that helps out. And just talking with you, I've talked to my brother about it, and I think just continue to talk about it with people and keeping it more front top of mind, I think is a good thing for me. Is my head energy just really just kind of reaching out of my head, just getting real worked up about things, whether it's excited or intense or angry or whatever it is, or is it more just within me, and it's just allowing myself to kind of go through things and allow other parts of my innate wisdom to take the lead more often.
Cool. That sounds good.
Yeah, yeah, so far so good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been a blast. I really enjoyed this conversation. This is one of the favorite conversations I've had in a minute here. So I really appreciate you
Yeah,
joining
I
me here,
enjoyed it
Janani.
too.
All
Yeah,
right.
thank
Well,
you. Thank you for arranging this. Yeah, thank you.
yeah, yeah. Looking forward to the next one.
Me too.
All right. All right. Take care, everyone.